All right, we'll call the March 26, 2026 Vision Fund Committee meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Member Peterson?
Here.
Schmitz?
Here.
Stugelmeyer?
Here.
And Chair Freilich.
Here. We'll start the meeting off with a public comment period. Anything on today's agenda or last week's agenda you're free to comment on. Second call for a public comment, and third call, and I don't see anybody here for that, so we will move on to the approval of the minutes, meeting minutes. If anybody's had a chance to look at the meeting minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye for approval.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We'll receive the Vision Fund financials. I believe Eric's here too. Not that there's a lot changed, but
Thank you. As you noted, there's not a lot changed. Cash is up about $5,700 from last month, and that's attributable to interest earnings with the city funds and the first repayment from Cloverdale. If you notice on the notes receivable page, we did receive our first payment from Cloverdale from Lewis and Clark of $2,229. So they have, I believe, a 5-year repayment period, so this is the first payment of that.
all right.
On the notes receivable page, nothing else has changed. We're still waiting on 2 approvals that have yet to request their buy-down money for Simply Golden Properties and then Algren Properties.
Do we have a count on how many days they have left to do that, or are we running into any of those time crunches? Okay.
It's getting close, I know that.
Yeah, so Algren Chair Freilich, Algren Properties has till October, so they have 4 or 5 months. Their time frame was this fall. They might need a short-term extension, but that could be looked at later in the summer. Simply Golden has until May 13th, if I remember right, and the Vision Fund meeting before that would be the April 23rd. I have it on that agenda. I'm meeting with the lender tomorrow. We're going to write up a quick one-pager explaining why and how long they need. That would be submitted to the Vision Fund at that April meeting. You guys would decide if it was to be granted an extension, and then we would go from there.
Were these both construction projects? I forget.
Yeah.
They were, okay.
Mm-hmm. Hence why it wasn't an immediate purchase. They had some construction time built into that.
Okay, any questions on that besides, if Eric wants to finish your report, sir?
I don't know that I have anything else to add as far as the financial statements go.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
You bet.
I'd move to accept the financial statements as presented.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the financial statements. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Then next item up on the agenda, strategic planning discussion. I attended a meeting on March 9th at the Chamber Development EDC with Noah, Derek, Chris were there. Brent is here today from Lewis and Clark, Kaylin, Courtney and Andrew from Bank of North Dakota. We got a little history about what some other cities do with their Vision Fund, maybe some ideas of what we could do with ours and trying to get a vision for our Vision Fund. And so I guess I would like to bring up Noah to start with, and he can recap a little bit about that meeting, and then we can bring up folks from the Bank of North Dakota, Lewis and Clark, and we can talk about maybe some of the things we talked about on the March 9th meeting. So, all right, Noah.
Chair and members of the committee, we did have that meeting on the 9th, and we came away with some target changes that we wanted to present to y'all for you guys to discuss, ask questions of the Chamber EDC, Bank of North Dakota, Lewis and Clark, and able to kind of empower the Vision Fund to be a bit more agile, and then also more specific in what projects it chose and the processes that it would use to speed up the overall process for projects to actually access the funding. So a few of the bigger ones that we were discussing were an actual target industry that would be set annually. So whether that would be some sort of value-added ag, or if the city felt like we needed restaurants. I don't think we need restaurants, but if we were to set an industry that we wanted to target annually, have the Chamber EDC talk to lenders and kind of advertise that that's what the city wanted for the year, we would be able to pull companies that we wanted to see instead of just pulling everything. We can still pull everything, but we want to actually target some said industries annually. So that'd be like an October meeting every year. And then a couple of the other ones were financing. I'm having a set annual input from the city. How that would look would be up to you guys and up to the city. If we want to try and make this a better program, we want to make sure that the lenders don't come here in a few months and not have funding to do economic development. So changes to funding, changes to how we actually do the matching for a flex-based deal. There was some discussion with Bank of North Dakota on property taxes offsets instead of using money from Vision Fund. Mike and Jason could probably talk a little bit more about that, but that way that it's not always just Vision Fund dollars going in, and we could potentially do more projects from the Vision Fund level.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the big ones. Might be missing a couple, but any questions?
So I don't know if anybody listened to the city commission meeting on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. So you know there's some angst potentially amongst commissioners or some commissioners, particularly, and it may be industry specific, although I have a hard time with that. But some of the comments are why are we funding those people who might have the ability to repay anyway on their own? My comment would be I want somebody who's going to be successful, so like that has to have repayment ability. But maybe this is a better question for other communities or towards the other community questions. What are restrictions or evaluation tools being used across the state when it comes to the viability of the business that is making the request first and foremost? So it isn't a pure grant. I mean, we don't look at it as a pure grant, but, you know.
If you don't have a repayment, it's a grant, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's a question. I don't know whether Bank of North Dakota can answer that, or if you can answer that, Noah, or.
I would probably lean on.
I can take a
Quickly
stab at that. And
answer
thanks, guys, for letting us come visit with you. I would say from that perspective, when we did some homework, just so we didn't come to you guys and say, this is how you should run your Vision Fund, we reached out to other communities, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So I would say communities across the state, there are none that stick out that have any restrictions on too much capital or access to capital. That is not something, they don't necessarily hold it against the ones that have more access to capital as opposed to those that do. So I would say that's not something that I would propose or see generally used in the industry to sway whether you should support the project or not.
Okay. I'm glad it's on record.
Would you like to, since you're up here, Caitlin, would you like to speak to some of what the other cities are doing
Yeah.
that we discussed at the meeting on March 9th?
Yeah, definitely, I can do that. So as we said, we wanted to reach out and gain feedback. Of course, we see certain interactions, but wanted to make a true effort to give you guys some good feedback on what we gathered worked really well. And I think one thing, and I've said this for years, the Vision Fund needs a vision, right? A focus or a priority. And as Noah mentioned, typically the communities, these entities that provide the community match across the state do look at this on an annual or maybe every other year basis. We don't typically see large swings from year to year of like, oh, we did this, now we're dropping that and moving to the next. It usually seems like it's a multi-year initiative. However, they're meeting every year and talking about it and saying, this is where we want to focus our dollars. So that's generally consistent across the state. Funding, that varies in how the different community sources are funded, whether it's, portions of sales tax dollars, property tax dollars, and things like that. Most of them do have a revolving fund, so as some of those projects start to repay, it replenishes their fund. And those entities that have the authority to make the decision of what types of projects they're gonna fund typically aren't the ones. So in the case of City of Bismarck, you guys actually have the dollars, but you would grant the authority to the Vision Fund. Typically, that's how they're structured, so then those separate entities have the authority to make those decisions on those dollars.
So actually, the city of Bismarck doesn't directly grant it to the Vision Fund. The Vision Fund makes a recommendation to the city.
Yes, and I'm saying, so like the Vision Fund in this case doesn't have the authority to make the decision, where typically the, that type of entity in the other communities does have that authority. And so it's just something that we talked about. It adds another step into the process. However, it's not a deal killer. I think as long as we know the timeline and communicate that, that is what it is. And just on that topic too, most of the communities throughout the state or these types of entities meet monthly with one board meeting approving the application. So it's a pretty streamlined process for most of these borrowers that are trying to access those types of dollars. A couple of the other things that we gathered through this too, some of the communities really use this PACE or flex-PACE contribution as a means to invest in their community. So they're promoting their investment in the community, and they use it as advertising and promotion that they're investing in these different locally owned businesses. And on that topic too, some of the communities do limit their contribution to locally owned businesses, right? So they don't necessarily incentivize outside investors in some communities. There are some communities who restrict the financial institutions who can access their funds if they're a member or support that local entity too. That's not something I would propose or recommend, but we're on the topic of just sharing different information that we've gathered. Most of the communities too, just from your guys' perspective, to make sure you're structuring your financing or contribution properly, most of them mirror the lead financial institution's documentation, so collateral, lien positions, and things like that. So there are ways to secure or maybe make your repayment more likely by following the bank's terms. There are some communities who do provide grants. Some communities provide grants or their contribution in the form of a grant, depending on what type of project it is. So if they're really focused on, maybe it's manufacturing in their community, they could provide that flex-PACE contribution in the form of a grant if it's something they're really trying to push. And I think that covers the bulk of what we talked about earlier this month.
Anybody have any questions?
I got one. So when these other communities are like looking at these target industries that they're looking for, so you said how often they meet, like once a year in like October to decide those industries, or once every other year, is that correct?
Most of them on an annual basis, just to refine their strategy of what they're trying to focus on.
Okay, so who's all involved in those conversations? Is it just the Vision Fund committee along with, or is it all like, did they open it up to the public, or how is that normally?
I would
done?
say not the public, but I would say in the case of Bismarck, and we didn't specifically get into details of that, and we can definitely seek that information, but I would hope the city commission in conjunction with the Vision Fund would sit down together, like the funding party as well as the party who's trying to promote economic development would come together and make that strategy decision together.
Thank you.
Noah, have you heard back from the entities we've given the Vision Fund dollars to that we're very hard to work with, or what's the feedback that you've heard back, or is there an evaluation you get?
Nothing like an evaluation post project that might be an idea for the future. Looking at the future, what I have right now in the docket, I have 5 Opportunity Fund projects that either just finished or are in process of letter of supports through the commission. And then I have 2 Vision Fund projects that might come up in April or May. There does seem to be a notion that it's faster to go through just getting the letter of support in through the city commission than going through Vision Fund. It adds about 3 weeks. But for projects that want to go quickly, they tend to go that way. So I don't think it's hard to work. I think it is just that time frame. Yeah.
So is that the time gap that Vision Fund's taking longer? Is that due to our meeting schedule, or what's that due to, would you say?
If the project were to come to me in the middle of the month and I could get them on, let's say, the second city commission in a month, that'd be a 2-week wait. But if it's within that week before the Vision Fund meets, it's going to be 5 more weeks until they can get on a Vision Fund meeting. Now that just is up to the Vision Fund if they want to meet as is, whenever there's a project, or every month at a set time. I think we found that every month at a set time works well.
And it's mostly just because the Vision Fund becomes the granting agency for the loan versus if they go to the Opportunity Fund, they just need a letter of support, just need, not always that easy to get. By going to the city commission, you're just adding the monthly meeting to the Vision Fund. That's the time delay for that. Because we've been approving projects in one meeting. Used to be two meetings, sometimes more. That it could be 2 months, 3 months, and then we're meeting ad hoc, which I don't like that. It's not a good cadence, because it's hard to plan for, but that's the time delay. It's just, if they want money that's from the Vision Fund, which carries a slightly lower interest rate than the North Dakota Opportunity Fund does, then they're gonna come to us probably regardless. I mean, most of these projects aren't funding their dollars out that fast. They're not, obviously, they're not drawing even in 9 months.
Yeah, I feel like, don't a lot of projects typically take a few months to even figure out? So I don't know why, are we not communicating all of our dates to the potential people who might want our funding? Or they just all of a sudden develop a project and, oh, I want the money tomorrow? I mean, it seems kind of quick.
Yeah, there's the construction loans, and then there's just the purchasing ones. The construction ones that we had earlier last year had a bit more of a runway, and that's why I feel like we had Algren Properties, we had Simply Golden, and those were construction loans, and we had more time. We got them through Vision Fund. New Freedom Family Center that we had back in January of this year, it was. That was a faster one. We still got it through Vision Fund, but that was just a purchase of a building. We did have a time frame on that one. Remember that in late December. So I think it does vary on the type of project.
Do our bylaws allow for us to email vote if need be, if we needed to be a little bit more nimble? I guess I'm not 100% sure on that.
Well, it's a public meeting, so it has to be a public meeting. We could do,
Public
we
notice.
could have special meetings, and they could be by teams, but we have to open up to the public, right?
You are correct. As far as I am aware, I have not seen any advisory board or authority board within this organization ever conduct an electronic email type vote. But to maybe elaborate a little bit more on the mayor's comment, historically, the Vision Fund met only when an application was needed. And what we found within the last couple of years is the challenge became getting enough people for a quorum to review an application in a timely process. So it was staff suggestion to find a day each month and set the meetings. So there is an established cadence, but then cancel the meeting if there wasn't an application to review.
Kaylin, would you like to come back up here and?
Yeah, I will just add in just to your comment about communicating the timeline. I don't think it's necessarily just the timeline. I would say it is probably more of the time invested, and they don't know what the Vision Fund is looking for or what types of projects they're willing to say yes or no to. So then they invest this 2-3 month period, and then they get to the end and it could be no. And so I think that's where they end up going, to the Opportunity Fund or a different route because they feel more certain on the end result. And so I think that's honestly the uncertainty of knowing what types of projects are far more an issue than the timeline. Because we can communicate the timeline, that's not a problem.
So I would throw that back to them and say, we have been looking for people to come and not said no unless it was.
We went in streaks, like I
Well-
felt like we didn't approve any, then we approved a couple, and then a whole bunch came in.
But that's because we hadn't been doing anything, so we're like, So, you know, I have a hard time saying we're gonna look at just this. If we're gonna have a vision, which I have no problem with what we're gonna look for, but it can't be one industry. It can't be.
Agree. No, I
Because-
think we should have an idea, but I think if we have maybe a vision or some ideas of what we like to see, maybe we don't have so much ebb and flow, and maybe we have a little more consistency with people coming to us because they know what we're maybe looking for.
But I would like to look to personally, you know, okay, what is Fargo doing? What, you know, like, what are they kind of looking at? Grand Fork, you know, the more metropolitan ones, so that we aren't losing out potentially on some of them to people that will go there.
Yep.
To
Would you
come
like to
here.
speak
Yeah,
on those?
And I can talk on, one of the ones you mentioned, they strictly focus on primary sector industry, so any value added, right, process or service type of thing, so that's gonna be manufacturing, which is what Bismarck in the past is what we kind of had shared with the banks from our perspective, is that's what the Vision Fund wanted to see. However, there's not a lot of manufacturing type of activity occurring in Bismarck. And so when we talk about a vision or a priority, it certainly doesn't need to be industry specific. It could be, you know, quality of life benefit. It could be adding jobs. It could be adding efficiencies. So maybe it's somewhere that we have a manufacturing company, they don't want to grow, but they can't hire people, which is probably more our issue. So how do we incentivize them to invest in equipment that can replace that work and still continue to do it? So I think there's a lot of other things you could look at as a focus or a priority other than an industry.
So Fargo's only looking at is
Primary sector.
really.
And so if they do
I think
something,
they've dropped buildings in and used their dollars.
so they will do like a
for
payment in lieu of
offices.
taxes or tax exemptions for some of their projects. So the city will provide that route, so the in-kind contribution route. But for true projects, they focus on primary
Okay,
sector.
I don't really want to be that restrictive because I think we're not a primary sector.
Correct.
Community. We have Bobcat.
Well, that's where I look at like an infill program. It could be anything. If you fill in some of our properties that are inside our spaces, that would be of really benefit in my idea of and keeping our tax base inside here and not having to build more curb and gutter and streets and everything to fund economic development. So I guess, do we want to open it up for discussion, or does anybody else want to speak to that? Lewis and Clark, or anybody on that, or just have questions for anybody?
All right, I'll be an hour or less.
Brent's not shy.
Yeah, don't put me in front of a microphone. Brent Ekstrom, Executive Director, Lewis and Clark Development Group. Just so, I mean, we've worked with the Vision Fund. I've been doing this a long time, right? And so we're obviously willing to work with you guys. Obviously, if you guys are getting into more of that flex space, we can stretch our money farther. We have a finite amount of money like anybody else does, right? And so we do ours as loans. It's going to be a little higher than yours. But if we could participate, that's what we used to do. When we did Cloverdale back in the day, right, it was a third was Mandan Growth Fund, a third was Vision Fund, and a third was Lewis and Clark, right? That kind of stuff stretches all of our money. The other thing is, obviously, we're willing to administer that loan for you. We do it for the Growth Fund. We do it now for the Vision Fund. So we're the ones that are doing the collections, and we actually start paying you, right? We paid you Cloverdale, so you're good, right? And so, just so you, I mean, so you're aware, we're the Opportunity Fund. Again, we do a lot in a lot of flex space in Fargo because they do not do primary. They only do primary sector, so anything coming in comes to us, right? Mandan obviously is a little bit different. They're right across the river. They do they'll do other they'll do primary and non-primary sector. We've done a lot of flex space over there too. So, but we're certainly willing to work with you guys. So whichever direction you go, we're willing to help and to administer that stuff and help with the application process and things like that. So if there's something that we can participate on, I think it makes your money go farther, makes our money go farther.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So I would like to have us at least consider, because we're paying two organizations. One of them's sitting here. I don't think the other one is. To actually bring to us a vision as to what would make, or some ideas for us as to what we should be looking for based on what's going on in Bismarck, Mandan.
Okay.
I mean, specifically Bismarck, but it's Bismarck, Mandan when we look at it. You know, whatever happens here is positive to Mandan and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Because and that's part of what they should be doing. And I know I've said that. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah.
And I know Brenda's well aware of this.
Yes, I can talk a bit to that. Those October meetings were in the original 2020 bylaws that we reviewed back in January. Whereas an annual meeting where we discuss kind of overall the vision fund, if we actually set like target industries, things we would look at for advertising. The Chamber EDC would be forefront and kind of leading that. Like, what does Bismarck need? Having those discussions, kind of pulling that out, and then presenting at that October meeting, our economic development team. And then we'd also work with y'all before that to get input before you guys would actually vote on things in October.
That would be
Yep.
helpful, because I think it's
Yeah.
very hard for the five of us sitting here or the city commission, because everybody is, they've got their own thing going on, but can get very
That's the
distracted.
whole reason there's an economic development
Yeah.
team. Yep. Any other questions on that?
So would we like to make a proposal then, or talk about ideas where we could go, or would we like to bring a proposal that we have the chamber come back as a group and bring us something of that? Our thoughts on that?
I would make a motion that we charge the Chamber EDC to develop our first
Vision.
vision or targeted industries group.
Have we had a target industries in the past, just in general, your economic development group? Like for Bismarck over the last 20 years, or?
It is gone like this. I
Okay.
mean, way back when it started, we were going after any big, I would say big business, not necessarily only just industry, so like Sykes or US, or whatever, Aetna now, and Unisys, and building these big buildings
Yeah.
through Bismarck Industries and so forth. And then it dried up, like nothing was going on, which is why we, 2 years ago, basically started funding some office buildings.
Yeah, or like Mike said, infill projects, other
Yep.
target neighborhoods, like.
That could be part of it.
As far as the planning department goes, like what, we can work with
yeah,
them,
I-
make sure the city's growing the right way, I don't know.
So the infill project's gonna be difficult unless it's in an industrial type park, because I think that we're gonna get a lot of pushback if we would say we wanna do infill projects. I wouldn't be as supportive of it to do residential
Well, no, yeah.
type construction. I would not support that.
We're looking for more economic development
Yeah.
projects and business projects, I
Yeah.
would assume.
That would fill, I mean, there's some infill that can happen on that, certainly.
Yeah,
And-
I just didn't know if there's certain core areas the city's looking at.
Depends on, I mean, residential, yes, there's a lot of infill to happen, but that's probably not what this belongs, in my view. I think there are some areas in the southern portion of Bismarck out towards the airport that absolutely. And I know there's new development going in northeast, assuming the development's gonna get done, but
Where would the scoring matrix come into play here too? I'm starting to think about that. Like if we're gonna have them design target industries or what we should look for, is that something that should be adjusted with that annually or every other year
it
as
could,
well?
it could be part of the scoring. I mean, we could have that be a point value. There might be something to eliminate, or we just increase the point value. I don't think that hurts, you know.
I think that's a great idea. You have a section where, does it meet our target thing? 3 points, 2 points, 1 point, whatever.
We should just build that into that matrix too, if we do go with that route, so.
It's a great idea.
And if I may, we would change the scoring matrix a little bit with that question 6. I think it was last time with that startup and amount of additional income. We'd probably split that, or at least give you guys a couple options on how we'd redo that question.
Does give you some skewed results when you're a startup and you have 0 to go from 0 to whatever pie in the sky. Doesn't get a number on a scoring matrix very well, so.
So
We have a motion. Do we have a second for charging the EDC to come up with a vision?
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion further?
As long as it includes, like Joel said, the updated scoring matrix.
Okay, do we want to put that into the motion, or do we
we
want to?
can add that to the motion. I think that's fine. I'll include that into my motion.
All right, we have a motion to charge the chamber with coming up with a vision fund, changing the scoring matrix to reflect that. Noah, is that something that this can come back to next month, or is it, okay? So we could have a May discussion on this and possible vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, April.
Or, sorry, April,
April.
yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, April, yeah, it's still March. Any further discussion? Then I guess I would take a roll call vote, Whitney?
Member Stugelmeyer,
Yes.
Scher? Oh, she's not here. Peterson? Yes. Schmitz
Yes.
and Freilich.
Yes. Motion passes. Anything else you'd like to discuss, Noah, on that?
Were there any other things you wanted us to potentially take a look at? The funding mechanisms, kind of like processes type side? Leave that for May, maybe, would also be an option.
As far as the process goes, I don't think we're too far. It's a part, I think it's mostly timing of when the company comes to you. If they happen to come to you that 1 week, you're gonna be 5 weeks out. Otherwise,
And-
it's pretty,
But
As-
if it was an urgent item, I would just say we try to call a special meeting and we could do it by teams. So it's a little easier to get the quorum. We would, so.
And communicating the timing better
Yeah.
with the lenders would also help eliminate that.
I know somebody, you brought up, or somebody brought up the funding source, okay? Or the dollars that are available. And, I mean, we can work in our budgeting. We already made a shift 2 years ago now, where we started moving money out of the general fund into the vision fund to pay for the economic development contract, which wasn't happening before. It was just eating away at the cash that was here. We also did have, probably 2 years ago or close, we put a request into the city commission to move $1 million from the Northern Plains Commerce Fund, which there's still dollars there. Those have been kind of held back in case we somehow find a industrial park that we maybe need to participate in as a city. But, I mean, we could certainly put a request into the budget committee that there would be some money allocated. I'm going to tell you that I don't know how it's going to fly at the moment, but knowing what is there out at Northern Plains, 3 mi, okay, so we have some, there's about 5 million that we could get access to. But I would be okay if we had, if we put in a request, we might as well put it in, we don't get it if we don't put it in. The question would be is how much do you think we need on an annual basis for grants? Or do you start with a number?
I mean, right now, we don't have a lot of projects coming in, so that number's stuck the same. Then our
I mean, we have-
financials have been the same for a while, but that could change very quickly too, so, I
Yeah, we
mean,
have $600,000 ballpark available.
It's all gonna come down to what, the bank's perception is of the vision fund. Because the banks are the ones that are, they're driving a lot of these conversations with their customers, right? Like whether you're using opportunity fund, vision fund, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if the banks get behind it and we're funding projects, that, we want to fund and that everyone's kosher with, I think, we could, use a substantial more funding. I don't know if it's $1 million or what that is, but we would definitely need more.
well, is that, do we want to look at that as a request this meeting or next meeting? Would we want to see our vision fund first and then make a request before? Do we want to do this something before? Or is this do we wait till we are closer to, does the committee have any thoughts on that?
The budget will be going through its processes in May for the city. So if there's going to be a desire to make a request, which I think, I think if we don't make a request, it's never going to happen.
Right.
If we make a request, it's a coin flip, being honest. But I would not go too big a number to start with.
I mean, is like a $500,000 request for the year in April before we get to the May meeting out of whack, or?
I have no problem putting the request in.
So.
I mean, the budget committee can look at it, but do know that there is, there's a limit on property taxes that we can collect.
Absolutely.
And that way back in the day, I think the first 1% sales tax that's in the city, part of that was carved out to be used towards economic development, but that has been repurposed and is used for infrastructure type needs.
Yeah, so a $500,000 request would get us to about where we'd have money for 10 projects, correct? Right?
Yeah, on
The way I'm
average,
looking at
we're
it.
about 103,000 or 107,000 if you use the maximum commitment for what we can do on our side, I think is what the number is, so. And we have, 620,000 left, so, I mean, yeah, that would get you to like 10 projects.
Do you think that would be reasonable?
I can't, I'm not on the budget committee. I'm on the city commission. I'm in belief of some economic development because I think it will drive additional tax revenue for us. But what we need to have is a plan. So I think, make the request is fine, but I think we need to have these targeted businesses to follow up with it by the time it gets to the budget hearing or to the preliminary budget in July. So I think it's okay to put the request in.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would maybe make a recommendation, we table that till April when we get the Vision Fund Committee meeting
We can
with the
do that.
vision, and then let's bring that back as a motion at that meeting, and we'll have a package that we could then send to the city commission for review.
I can tell you that I'm not all that inclined to look at the other way of doing the match is through some sort of in lieu of or
In
a
kind,
bid-
yeah.
in kind type. I think that's going to be a harder sell.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, Noah, you've got your tasks. You have any questions?
Nope.
All right, then I think we are adjourned.